Hey, this is Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
So I'm picking my son up from camp, so I'm just on the phone anyway, so.
I'm sorry, I can't make out what you're saying because it seems to be kind of, I seem
Windy,
to have
yeah.
a lot of, oh, okay, now I hear you better.
Yeah, no, I'm picking my son up from a camp, from his soccer camp, so.
Oh, okay.
Hello?
Hi, Rob.
Hi.
We just wait for a couple more minutes to see if anybody else is going to be joining in, and then we can get started.
Okay, I didn't see an agenda, but I guess you'll put it up on the screen here.
Yeah, okay, let me move to the agenda page. Actually, we don't have, oh, I see, I didn't even change that. I forgot to change it from the last week. So we don't really have a lot on the agenda today, so.
Okay.
So I guess we can get started. In the room here, I have Ergin, Shaoling, and Nina. Was traveling still. Trevor said he's going to be off this week, and I don't see Todd on the call, so I'm assuming he's not going to be on this call today. And on the call, we have Diana, Elizabeth, Huni, Ian, Ron, and Yuling. Did I miss anybody?
Claudio, hi.
Hey, Claudio.
Yeah, this is Jeff.
Jeff, I'm sorry. So, Claudio and Jeff, you are not on the web, right?
I just joined the web, so I can see it.
Oh, okay. All right. So as for the agenda, actually, I'm sorry about the fact that we have the version 1 feedback survey analysis still in there because we talked about this last week. What we will talk about today is a little bit about the repositories that we are including into DataMed. I also was planning to ask about updates from all team members since this is the last call for 2016, and update from Jeff and Alejandra and Philippe, but I don't see Alejandra and Philippe on the call, so I assume Jeff can provide us an update on a call that they were going to have regarding the data type ontology and maybe DATS 2.1. So for our action items, one of the major action item is to generate a help and a FAQ page. Nina is working on the FAQ, which we are pulling from the review that we received from Pittsburgh Group, as well as all the issues that we have reported in GitHub. Also, for the help page, we have an outline put in, so please start adding material there as soon as possible. The timeline for at least the FAQ is about mid-January. We want to get at least a decent number of questions incorporated into that by mid-January, and then of course we'll probably be adding in as and when we feel the need to add in additional questions. But this is the timeline for the help and the FAQ. In terms of the video, Jeff, I guess we were supposed to circulate that among the CDT and the EC.
Yep, I got the link this morning, so
Okay.
I'll send that out.
All right. And for pilot project integration, we will have Chris presenting on the 10th of January, and also since today originally the CEDAR group was supposed to be meeting with us, that was their monthly meeting schedule, but a lot of them are apparently on vacation since it's just a week before the holidays, and so John wanted us to meet, but instead of waiting for a month, he wanted us to meet earlier if that would be possible. So we said that we could meet on the 10th again. So as soon as we come back, we'll have Chris presenting to us with regard to his pilot project, and then we will talk with the CEDAR team to follow up on a couple of things. The other update is Link Out, which went live as of last Thursday. And if you want to look at all the link outs that are provided from, or that link from PubMed to DataMed, this is what you need to do. So there's a link there which you can use to get the link out, and if you want me, I can actually copy and paste that link to the chat box. So everybody. Okay. I think I probably missed one parenthesis there. at the end.
It still works.
It does? Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
So that's so please do go in and review just to be we want to be sure. I mean, Xiaoling already reviewed a little bit as soon as we received the information from Kathy about going live. So she did test it out a little bit, but it would be great if everybody could go in and test out parts of it. That way we know that things are okay, and we would appreciate it if we get some feedback with regard to this. If there are anything that doesn't look correct or is is broken, then it would be great if we could get some feedback.
So just to get some perspective on it, Anu, it's showing 587 links. When we had the conversation with Kathy, she emphasized that we probably shouldn't duplicate links that are already there.
That's right.
So what is this? Is this just a selected set of links for demo purposes? Does it represent all links of a particular type? Could you give us a bit more perspective on what's been linked?
So original we have 9 repository which has public ID, and then I sent this 9 repository list to Kathy, and then she said 4 of them have already been NCBI, so she suggests we don't include these 4 repository like File Project, GO, I don't know the other 2. So these 585 are from the other 5 repository which have partner ID.
Right, so those, I can read those out for you. Those are from Peptide Atlas, OpenFMRI, PhysioBank, YPED, and DMRB. These 5 are not duplications, and so she suggested that we focus on these links.
Okay. So
I do. I mean, the question is once the UI, has more features, I mean, they aren't going to be duplicates in some sense, right? Because BioCaddy will provide more information about the data set than just the data set landing page. And so that's I think, something that might have to be brought up in the future again is that, when we have more content on the pages, sort of value-added information on top of the data set, then we aren't a duplicate. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's a duplicate link to, from a PubMed article to a data set, but it's different information about that data set potentially.
I agree, but when we did talk to her about the additional information, such as I think what we talked about was like related data sets. She did not seem very convinced that it was, it would be super useful. So maybe later on, if we find that our users do like that feature, that's something that we could go back on. And
I would say that we're not in a final situation with something like that. I mean,
right.
I think we need to be exploring the kind of thing that Jeff has just raised. And I think now we've got it out there, we can get feedback on it along with everything else in GitHub and, deal with the issues and the pros and cons as they come up there.
Right.
And I think, we'll need to revisit that question with Kathy. That the thing is that I think we've gone about this in a fairly, I'm going to say, we've got to be respectful of what Kathy's concerns are, and I think we've done that, but we need to continue to explore those boundaries. Because when we were talking about it with her, this was all theoretical. Now we've got links, we can show links, we can try out other possibilities. So I think this is an ongoing issue that we will iterate on.
Right. And as we index more repositories, I think we will have more repositories for which we will be providing link outs, and then maybe we will provide updates at those times as well, depending on the feedback.
So at some point, does it make sense to have another discussion with Kathy, or perhaps you have had those continued discussions with Kathy?
We've been just emailing back and forth. We haven't really talked to her, but since it went live only last Thursday, maybe after the holidays, we can go and see. I think one of the important things for us to keep track of is also to see how much traffic we are getting from using link outs, right? From them.
Yeah, but that's not the state it's in at the moment. Sure, I mean, in theory, that's a good thing to track, but it's, the coverage is so patchy right now that I don't think that traffic is going to be very informative upon which to make decisions about is a link out connection a good thing or not. With 587 links, out of all of the records in PubMed, the chance that someone happens across such a record is relatively small.
Well, plus the fact that link out is buried, it's below the fold on most people's browsers.
You've got to be pretty persistent.
Well, consider it another part of prototype development, and that is looking at things that may be useful, testing them out, and to the best of our ability, getting the message out there so that people can access it and tell us whether it's worthwhile.
Right, and I think also at the BD2K All Hands meeting, there was interest expressed from Uniprot to link into or to provide links to BioCaddy or DataMed, and that might be useful in a similar way that we would have, the link out is useful for us. So I think that's something that we should. We will pursue moving forward as well. Also, so was there anything else? Any other comments?
Did I say this already, Anu? This would be a good topic for an FAQ, but the frequently asked question would probably be which repositories are linked to through Linkout.
Okay.
Which repositories that DataMed has indexed are linked out through Linkout. You referred to that there was a few of them, so it would be good to see those listed in an FAQ item.
Sure.
And updated as that changes, of course.
Of course, yeah. Originally, we were planning on doing a complete reindexing on the 9th of January, but Jeff suggested that we move the date to the 16th since people are just going to be coming back from holiday. And so that's the plan, that we would have a complete reindexing on the 16th, and that will also hopefully give us some time to maybe update the code on the NLP pipeline in the first 2 weeks of January. So in terms of including repositories into DataMed, one of the requests last week was to see a list of all the repositories that we are planning to index, which are upcoming, and I did list them out here, but what would be potentially a better resource to look at is actually the spreadsheet that we have. Let me share that. I don't know if it's visible. So we have a spreadsheet which is available under Google Docs, and this spreadsheet under the core development team, and it's actually I think under version 1.5 right now. Now this spreadsheet actually tracks all the repositories that we have been mapping, and the status of the repositories. They are mostly updated, I have to say. Maybe there are a couple that are not updated yet. But if you go in here, you can see the list of repositories that we are working with and what stage we are at for most of the repositories. Like for some of them, we are in contact with the repositories themselves and working on putting it in.
So this spreadsheet we're relying on this. We NIH are relying on this as part of the dashboard, if you like, on DataMed. So it would be very helpful if this could be updated, and this represents the current situation at any time. So
sure.
That the importance of keeping this up to date is, that's important.
Okay.
And also the other thing that it has in there, and I don't know how you are tying this in, but over to the right-hand side is George's efforts to prioritize, right?
Right.
And in some, it'd be good to know. I mean, how does that reflect what?
In this column here, this view here, let's see, the third column over, the first three columns past priority score says in version 0.2, 0.5, and 1.0. And I suppose it would be helpful if we had column 1.5 right after this.
Right. So this spreadsheet was created about a couple of, I want to say about 2 months ago. And the reason I moved these, so for each version we've created a new spreadsheet, but we've kept all the legacy information still in there. So whatever you have up here, because at this point of time when we started working with the spreadsheet, we really wanted to follow how much time it's taking us from the time we start, looking at a specific repository in terms of pulling in the sample data to completion of the indexing and getting it onto the development server and finally into the production server. So the most updated version is actually in here in version 1.5, and it should tell you whether it's there or not. You can see that it's in the development server here, and now in the production server, yes, the dates are available here. So one thing that we could plan, so this is for version 1.5 release, and I could just duplicate this and put another one for version 2 release, because then that would be much more useful going forward, I think.
Yes, well, I agree. I think it would be.
But I don't. Why would it need a separate sheet? This is a single database essentially that I would hope. I mean, everything that's in 1.5 would carry forward to 2.0, right?
Right.
So just having the version number in there in which it appears, would cover it if we need to filter.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my understanding, that it is a continuation, so that shouldn't be a separate spreadsheet for 2.0. But going back to Ian's point of a few minutes ago, it's very important for us at the NIH to have this up to the minute, so that if we ever get a query from the ads office or someone else or from an IC, we can have the information ready at our fingertips to provide the answer.
Okay. So as for the NI, what Sandra and George are working on with the repository, so for I have been going in, and if a repository came into us from a list which was, came via any of the NIH folks, then it's typically marked as 1, and I have been marking those, and then the rest of them are getting marked as 0. And for those that we have marked as 1, Sandra hasn't been putting in any of the priority scores. However, for what's been marked as 0 or which doesn't have anything in there, she has been putting in the priority scores. And the plan is that we would sort based on the priority score to get the next repository, to get a list of the next set of repositories that we will index.
So a couple of points about that, Anu. Number one is the pun here is unfortunate, but we don't get a trump card as NIH. So, and it relates to my second point, which is, this priority scoring. I think we need some discussion of how that's going. I mean, I think is that priority scoring giving sensible scores? And the connection with the NIH prioritization is, well, are we using a different set of criteria, and how can we make sure that we merge what NIH's criteria are with anybody else's criteria? I think what NIH's criteria are should be open and transparent, and anybody else should be able to look at them and form their own assessment based on what our criteria are.
Well, I haven't received any information on what the NIH criteria are.
No, I'm not sure that that's ever been explicitly discussed, other than things like, if it's in the Commons, then
Right.
But
right.
I think this has got to the point now that George has done the scoring, that we have another discussion about how prioritization works.
So I do remember that we had at one point also talked about looking at the priority score for even the NIH recommended.
I asked George to score those against his criteria too.
Yeah, and I haven't. So I don't know if Sandra has gotten on to it. I can find out from her. So an additional thing that I want to mention here is that for the DataCite biomedical repositories, from which we are pulling in about 30 or so repositories, I was planning to make a list of them down here, and then we can actually just keep track, just for our own information, that those are the repositories that have been covered and those are being covered under the DataCite, because I think for some of them we're going to have duplicates coming in when we have the complete information coming in from the repositories themselves.
So did you say there are about 30 of them?
Yeah, it's on the order. It's on the order of about 30.
And what does that
granularity
represent?
Granularity in terms of, these are individual data repositories, data stores, and we're getting the data via the DATS feed that was implemented after the June workshop.
So if there are 30 of them, are they institutional? Are they a particular?
It's a mix. There's
institutional,
there's journal-based, And then also large-scale repository like Zenodo, for example. So it's a mixture of them. And so basically, DataCite has a list of different repositories and institutions, and here and picked out and basically selected the biomedically relevant ones, and those are the ones we included in this pass.
And this is all structured data, right?
Yeah, this is all. I mean, this is actually the first real DATS feed. So the data records for each of these is a DATS record. It's minimal DATS in the sense that it's coming from DataCite, which has more minimal registration requirements, but it is a DATS feed. So it's our first, in a sense, large-scale connection to sort of an aggregator that provides DATS.
And what stage are these at now in the ingestion process or the mapping process? Ongoing, it says, right?
It says ongoing primarily because we have some that have been ingested, and uploaded or updated onto the UI. For example, let's go in here. The Beijing Genomics Institute is something that comes from the DataCite.
See, the fact that these are DataCite are, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's fairly incidental, right? It's like saying that somebody's maintaining their data in Oracle, which isn't saying very much. It's the system in which that repository is maintained, and that probably each of these, as you're saying, should be listed separately as a different repository.
Yeah, well, DataCite is what issues the DOIs, right? So if a repository is issuing DOIs, so Beijing Genomics Institute, which does a lot of sequencing and is making data available, issues DOIs for their data because they're tied in with GigaScience. And so their repository has all these DOIs, and then DataCite is an aggregator where we can pull the metadata from those records.
But if Beijing Genomics Institute creates a record,
they have their local. They have their local repository.
But what is that record? It's not a single sequence, right? We need to be careful here about granularity and indexing data sets as opposed
to... Well, a single genome from Beijing Genomics Institute is a single data set.
So what that means, if they do some species...
Like the panda genome, the panda genome.
Right.
Is one of the ones that they did.
Okay. That's the right kind of granularity.
So we have some of them that have been updated on the UI already, and then I think Burak sent us a lot more from what I understand, and we still haven't updated it because, as you know, Reling is away on vacation and Shaolin has been pretty busy with the challenge work, and also we were fairly busy just before at the end of November working towards release of version 1.5. So we have, I think, about, from what I heard, 30 more that should get updated on the UI, and most of those do come from the DataCite. So maybe listing I don't know if we want to list them separately here in our list of repositories?
Yes, but I'm suggesting that that's the right level of granularity. But there's an important other product here, Anu, which is if we've got these 30, the first thing that there needs to be is a prioritization. And the deliverable or thing that we need to be able to visibly see and something that needs to be coming out of the BioCaddy project is how is a repository prioritized?
So
And
if
that needs to be something that, aside from software, we need to be seeing as a tangible product at and it needs to be evolved so that at the end of this, it can be written up in some way to say, here's the infrastructure we set up for prioritizing repositories.
So the one question there is when we start going to aggregators, right? So DataCite has some large-scale repositories like Zenodo and Figshare, but you sort of get the others for free because it's using the same connection.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm just because, like, for example, with the DataCite, there are some smaller ones that might not be, what's considered a priority, but they sort of come for free when one does the larger scale ones through these aggregated feeds. So
right, and that's the kind of discussion and that needs to be walked through in the deliverable that I'm describing. So this isn't just a question of going through and working it out for the purposes of what we're trying to do here. It's a question of working it through and describing the pros and cons and coming up with what seems to be a recommended approach. But such a recommended approach is going to have to get to grips with the kind of things you're raising.
So maybe if what we could do is list all the potential repositories from any of the aggregators and then have the criteria or the priority scores assigned for all of them.
Yeah.
Well, yes, that would be interesting to have, but you need to have some way of understanding what the priority score means.
But that's already been defined.
Well, again, the issue is transparency. It needs to be clear to someone looking in, how transparent that is.
Well, the scoring mechanism has been defined, Anu, but just like anything else, that's a work in progress. It's a stake in the ground, which we, just like anything else, will provide feedback on and say, we need to revise those criteria.
Okay.
And if we go through the exercise of scoring them, then we can say, well, does this give us a sensible answer? And it says, maybe it's saying, our criteria are missing something.
So then at some point, I guess, after we have these scores and we could have a review and see if the scores are as useful as we expect them to be.
Yeah, I think that's about right. We want to, at some sensible point, in the not too distant future, we need a review of how prioritization works that has a relevant set of stakeholders involved in it.
Okay.
But on the question of which repositories to index next, I think there are two other important questions which it seems to be important to address. One is the testing and validation of how each repository has been indexed.
Right.
And looking at some of the repositories that have been indexed, they leave something to be desired. And so it seems that there needs to be more focus on validation, testing, whatever we want to call it, of each repository as it's done, which involves, again, the relevant stakeholders. In that case, it would certainly include the repository. That's one aspect of it. The other major aspect of each repository being indexed is how that repository continues to be indexed. These are not a one-time deal, and it's not clear yet how DataMed stays up to date with any repository, unless I'm...
So that is the reason why we are actually planning on doing the reindexing of the whole set, which is scheduled for middle of next month. So we go through the process, and then we decide also as we move on along how frequently we would reindex, and that would also is something that would get into the FAQ, the frequency of reindexing and the frequency of updating of the index.
Well, I would suggest that is one of the questions that needs to be asked on a repository by repository basis as each one is indexed. And the indexing mechanism that's done for each one has to bear in mind that this is not, this is not just for Christmas, as they say. This is something we need to care and feed year round. I guess it's the UK RSPCA that had the slogan, "A puppy is not just for Christmas."
Right. I think Jeff probably can answer that better, but as to whether we would reindex on a repository by repository basis or whether it would be a complete batch.
Well, that probably needs looking at repository by
Right.
repository.
Mm-hmm.
But the basic question is, I think that you have to tell me if there is any doubt around the question. Any of these repositories are continually adding data. So the fact that any repository needs to be continually reindexed is a given. It's certainly going to be, I think there might be the odd exception to that, perhaps. But repositories are not static things.
Correct. But it's a little noisy where I am. But the issue is also then, because there is overhead in sort of oversight of, a complete recrawl. So that's why we're doing the full recrawl in January to do that. To get an idea of what it takes. In terms of oversight when we're doing a whole number of repositories.
That information would be good to have. So I think we can have this discussion again once this particular reindexing is completed and we see what it has taken and what we've achieved as a result of it.
Okay. So, Jeff, did you have a meeting with Alejandra and Philippe?
Not yet.
Okay. Because I did remember that you were supposed to have a meeting. So do you need some help to set up the meeting or set up the call?
No, I think, we were just around the all hands meeting, and then sort of the proposal deadlines after that. We've all sort of been busy.
Okay.
So Jeff, a question about this. When we talk about data types, to what extent do you think what we mean by a data type is synonymous with what you might call the platform on which data is obtained? So, for example, in other contexts, when we might talk about MRI as a platform. We might talk about fish as a platform, or a particular gene expression technology as a platform. And each of those platforms tend to produce different kinds of data. Now, amongst those, there are some similarities and dissimilarities. Some types of platform are more similar than others, but that's the kind of thing an ontology can capture. The reason I say it is because I think there are some ontologies around that have attempted to look at platform.
I think it's related to platform, but some platforms can provide different data types in some sense. At the higher level, they're the same. So, you mentioned MR, but then you have, within MR, you have, the functional images, you have arterial spin labeling, which may be different data types, may not. That's sort of a question. Those are different data types because they're imaging different sort of underlying physiological processes.
Right, but it's not so much. And that's what I'm saying. Ontology can capture that kind of complexity. The point is, to my mind, there have been some attempts to capture platforms which, rather than saying, hey, nobody's ever created a data type ontology, there are things that we could be looking at. Or am I mistaken?
There are starting points. So there are. So OBI has, I think, some of the platform information. There are also ontologies related to file types, which is slightly different than data types. So there are things out there, but the question is also how does that ontology relate to what we're trying to do, right? Because an ontology that is meant to take into account all the granularities required to manage data types for the processing of data may be too granular and won't apply properly to a search interface. And so that's, I think, the other piece of information that we have to take into account.
But a good ontology would give you that kind of roll-up to a high level of granularity from...
Not always. It depends.
It depends on how it's put together.
Yeah, exactly.
I did say a good ontology.
That's in the eye of the beholder, right?
Yeah, for these ontologies, is this where Susanna's website comes in handy?
Yeah. So I know OB's listed there. I'm pretty sure that the data file, that ontology comes from EBI. I forget what it's called. But so I'm pretty sure that those are actually listed there.
what's it called? OBI.
Ontologies for biomedical investigation.
OBI. Actually, we, Shaoling did a quick review some time ago to look for any ontologies that are out there that define data types, and we didn't really find anything very useful, which is why Alejandra and Philippe also, we were discussing that at one of the meetings, and then it was decided that maybe it would be useful for us to create an ontology.
So Anu, this is Hyuni. I have a quick question. So have you guys looked at the OntoDT? OntoDT, Ontology of Data Types, which is registered to BioPortal. I'm not sure if how valid or widely adopted OntoDT is, but
we looked at that, as I remember, and a lot of them, when they're talking about data types, are talking about the file formats, mostly not really defining the types of data.
Okay.
But maybe if you have any suggestions, please do pass it along to Alejandra, or if you send it to me, I can. Because whatever we reviewed and collected, and there were some, it's not that they're not there, but they do not provide a comprehensive enough coverage for DataMed.
I see. Okay, so I will send you a hyperlink, but this might not be that helpful either, but yeah, I just came across this ontology.
Sure, I mean, we can just send it to Alejandra, and they could review that when they're
All right.
putting together something for DataMed.
Okay.
So in GitHub, we actually have 213 total issues, with the numbers that are open being 104. A lot of the issues that are, I mean, at least about, I want to say about 5 or 6 are simply tests in this set, because when we were about to release 1.5, we were actually testing whether the issue reporting is working properly or not. So those were all things that came in and, got closed immediately. But besides that, we've had a fair number of issues that have gotten entered recently after version 1.5 was released, and from also Ian had a presentation, or Ian talked to a couple of people at NIH internally about DataMed, and they were testing it out, and we had some feedback from them as well. So in terms of ongoing work, I think there are a lot of things here that are ongoing and are going to be ongoing all the time. For example, expansion of the number of repositories is, of course, always ongoing. The metadata mapping, management, indexing are all ongoing. For the NLP-based indexing, we do want to improve it a little bit more, and so that's something that we will start working on after we come back from the holidays. The other thing which I think would be important for us to provide for version 2, if it's possible, is having a space somewhere where people can download the indices. So this is something that was requested, and we said that it's something that we would provide. So bulk download of indices is something that we want to work on. as we move forward, we also want to work on display of the most accessed data sets. We do not have a very good, how should I say it? We don't have enough data yet to be able to display it, but hopefully as our user base increases, we will get enough data to be able to display that. And in terms of the tracking system, Diwakar is still working on that, and we do hope, since this is something that would be implemented at the back end, we want to be able to implement it as soon as he's done finalizing it, and we will test it out with the development instance of DataMed first before putting it on to the production system. Now, Reling has expanded the similar datasets algorithm for all the repositories that we currently have on DataMed version 1.5. But this is again something that will be ongoing and that keeps getting done as and when we have more repositories getting indexed. So right now we have on version 1.5 we are able to sort data sets based on published date and titles. However, we do not have it getting sorted based on author, because I think there was some concern that this is going to be really hard to do because disambiguation is hard. And in terms of repository, since we have the facet which actually provides the repository, we are not very sure if we should still go ahead with providing a sorting function based on repository. So that's something that maybe we could discuss in the next meeting or in the next couple of meetings. There also were requests from issues that were reported in GitHub about having additional facets which are based on file types and data restrictions. So where available, we do have data restrictions as a facet, but it's not necessarily always available from all repositories. So this is something that needs to be, maybe a little bit more work needs to be done before we can actually provide this kind of service. Also, there was a request that they need to be able to sort through data depending on whether it's available on the organism that is available from it. So that's something that we will also have to see and tag probably at the level. I do not know that we have that information for all data sets, but if it is available, then I think we should be able to provide that as a facet. So most of these filters, as they talk about, are going to be displayed as facets, and this is something that we need to look into. So in terms of linking to external resources, we've already talked about LinkOut. And for PubMed, we are providing a link to PubMed records. And we also do have copying of the citations to clipboard that has been implemented. The Scholix framework is something that we looked into, but it's more a framework and not really any kind of data linkage that they've provided. So this is something that we need to follow up. And the Scholix framework has just been initiated, so we do not have a lot of details yet. So this is something we're going to keep our eyes out for to see if it is something that we can pull into DataMed. So in terms of source code tutorials help, we already talked about all of these. Also with the source code, please do deposit the source code in GitHub as soon as possible, and we would like to keep it as updated. and the user studies are ongoing. So in terms of data duplication issue, I think it's been discussed, and we have an additional field in the index already available. So this is something that has been partially addressed and maybe could be addressed in a more comprehensive way a little later. If there is any other issue that we need to talk about, I think we are at the end of our time right now, but if there's anything else that we should be talking about. If not, happy holidays everybody, and see you all on January 10th.
Yeah, nothing else.
Happy holidays.
Okay, thank you. Good. Happy holidays to all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.